Okay, guys, last lesson we talked about the definition of fantasy, and today we're going to actually start talking about comparing different text or fantasy text. This is on page 63 of my notes, and I'm going to title this Fantasy Comparing Text. So when you get to your STAR test, just keep in mind that you will be required to compare two different texts quite a bit. So if you get to your STAR test and you see a reading passage and there's no questions after it, don't panic. There might be some, like another text you have to read, and then they'll start giving you questions about both of those. So just keep that in mind. All right, once you've written your title, go ahead and twist your paper around so it's horizontal. And I am going to create a chart that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns wide and 3 rows deep. The first row is going to be kind of skinny though, so don't make them all even. All right, I'm going to make my giant rectangle. Okay. And then my first row I said was going to be pretty skinny. It's going to look like that. And then I'm going to make these as even as I possibly can. 1, 2, 3. Well, that did not make it as even as I thought it would. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows or columns over. I also want to take this giant one right here and I'm just going to split that in half. And up here at the title, I'm going to title this Supernatural Occurrence. The next one is just going to be Magic. Animals and things with, and when you have a W and a slash like that, that's shorthand. Kind of like this upside down 4 is shorthand for and. This W and slash is a shorthand for with. Human characteristics. Then we have made up characters in real. Uh-oh. All right, and I had to write a little outside my box, but that's okay. In real places. All right, so we have 2 different stories that we've been reading. We've been reading Westlandia and the Lorax. So just keep that in mind as we're going through. I am looking at those 2, or I'm using those 2, and I'm comparing those 2 stories. So the first one is Westlandia. And the first thing I want to think about Westlandia is, you know what, I'm going to zoom this in a little bit so you guys can see a bit better. How about that? Much better. Okay, so first thing is Westlandia, and we need to talk about supernatural occurrences. Were there any supernatural occurrences in Westlandia? And I think that there was. Specifically, the page where it talked about the wind blew in from the west to plant his land. While winds can blow from the west, winds don't usually blow in from the west specifically to go plant one person's garden. They usually just kind of blow because the air temperature is changing. It's spring going into summer, or it's fall becoming winter, and the air is different. And while you can get seeds blowing in the wind, they usually aren't specifically blown through the wind just to plant one person's garden. Magic. In Westlandia, there was some magic. We talked about the plants. Oh, there go my lights. Grew super tall in only a few weeks. Most plants do not grow super tall in only a few weeks. It takes them several months. I've been trying to grow some plants myself, and they're a couple weeks old, and they're still only about 2 or 3 inches tall because it takes them a while to grow and start becoming. But these plants, man, they planted, the wind blew in, planted them, and a couple of weeks later, they were taller than he was. So that tells me there might be some magic involved in that. I was looking at this one, the animals and things with human characteristics. There weren't really any animals or things with human characteristics. So I'm going to put none, because there were none in Westlandia, nor were there any made-up characters in real places. We did have a real character in a supernatural place, though. So that is one thing, and I didn't have enough space to put it into this one, so we weren't comparing that section. But that is one of those things that is part of Westlandia. If, however, we take a look at the Lorax, things are a little bit different. We have a supernatural occurrence in the Lorax. He built a shop almost immediately. And this is a new type of and, I apologize. He made the Thneed. There's no truffula trees and no Thneeds that I know of running around in this world. So that's where we got that Thneed from, because that's a supernatural occurrence. It really didn't happen. And it was a little bit outside of the reality. We didn't really see any magic happening. However, we do have some animals and things with human characteristics. There's all kinds. I'm only going to write down the Lorax. You could also put the Barbaloots. But there's also the fish that got up and walked out of the fish pond. There's the birds that flew away. There's all kinds of animals here that have different human characteristics. And last but not least, we have made-up characters in real places. We have made-up characters, the Lorax, who is in sort of a real place. It's more of a fantastic place. Dr. Seuss made the forest a truffula forest, which makes it supernatural, okay, which is why we listed the Thneed in there. But made-up characters, the Lorax in a real place, we can actually find a forest running around. Even if we go up north of Houston, there's a forest out there. And so that is something that we would find, a real place we would find in our world. Okay, we ready to discuss the differences between two different texts, and fantasy text specifically, but any text in reality, and in your next class.